Welcome to MSP TV. This is our first live broadcast from the Humanitarian Impact of Nuclear Weapons Conference in the Austria Center Vienna in Vienna. We're joined by Bonnie Doyle, and thank you very much for being here. She's from the Harvard Law Center, the International Human Rights Clinic,
Yes.
and a renowned expert on humanitarian law. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
First off, though, a bit of context. We're here at the Humanitarian Impact of Nuclear Weapons Conference. It's organized by the Austrian government before the meeting of states parties of the United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. This is part of all of the various conferences of Nuclear Ban Week that we're coming live from in order to give you also a summary of what's going on in Vienna on these very important topics. And the idea behind this conference is really to zoom out a bit on nuclear weapons, not just get stuck in these abstract deterrence debates about what nuclear weapons do in political terms, but also to look at them as practical machines. I mean, they are physical objects that are designed for a specific purpose, and the humanitarian conference is really trying to focus on that. What do they do?
Well, the ultimate goal of the treaty is a humanitarian one, so it's really important to keep in mind the humanitarian consequences, and there's a whole host of them. At the time of attack, they cause blast injuries, and then they had the long-term, of course, radiation impacts, and they cause physical injuries at the time. They cause physical injuries long after the fact: cancer, thyroid harm, intergenerational impacts are not to be forgotten. They also cause environmental damage. As a result of that, they cause displacement, which interferes with culture, a whole range of effects, which in turn cause violations of human rights.
So really a look at the detail of what nuclear weapons do: heat, blast, radiation,
Exactly.
Impact on people, the environment, and then also sessions on likelihood of nuclear use, like systemic models, various what can go wrong on the technical end, human end, and I suppose also things that have changed since 2014, since the last conference on the humanitarian impact. What was the invasion of Ukraine and of Crimea? So this is really a good moment to have such a conference again.
Very much so. It's a timely moment, and I think it highlights the real world impact of this treaty and the significance of the treaty. The treaty has prohibitions that will prevent these kind of harms in the future, but it also has positive obligations that can address the harms of the past. And I think it's important to remember the twofold impact of the treaty.
And indeed, it's the only treaty that prohibits the current behavior of the Russian government to threaten the use of nuclear weapons. So that's a significant prohibition as well. But it's also a conference that brings in a number of states that haven't yet signed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. So I guess a way to also show them the substantive arguments of why we're trying to prohibit these weapons.
Correct. And one of the goals of the treaty is to universalize it, one of the obligations of the treaty. And we hope that by the observers' presence here is that they will be persuaded to join the treaty, of course, and also they can engage with the treaty. States that aren't party can contribute to victim assistance. They can contribute to remediation. They don't need to be party. And we hope that they will start to engage in that way, as well as to be persuaded to join soon.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for this overview of the conference today. It'll be very interesting proceedings, and we will come back to you at the end of the day with a summary of what's been going on. Thank you so much for being on, Bonnie.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And we're joined now next by Hinamura Cross. She comes, please come on. She comes to us directly from French Polynesia after a more than 20-hour flight. Yes. Thank you so much for making all the way.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here and to be the voice of Pacific and Polynesia.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being here. We invited you on to the live stream because you're from French Polynesia, you're a nuclear activist, yes. And you have been impacted by nuclear weapons. Tell us more about your story.
Okay, so I'm born in French Polynesia. My parents are from French Polynesia, and our country, our land, has been the military seat of French nuclear tests. Mm-hmm. So it started in 1966. My dad was 14 years old and my mom was 2 years old. And it ended in 1996 when I was 7 years old. And we had 193 nuclear tests in my country. So today I became a militant, an activist in 2019 because I want to denounce what happened and all the consequences. And I'm one of the sad example of the consequences on my people is that every woman in my family, they had a thyroid cancer or a breast cancer. And me, I had nothing until my 24 years old. And since 9 years now, I'm fighting for a chronic myeloid leukemia. So it's why I'm here to talk about the sick people, to talk about all the disease that is touching all my people in Polynesia.
Thank you so much for that. That really brings home the message also for me that this is not an abstract issue that we talk about at United Nations conferences. This is something that really touches real people and lives on the ground and the entire family, in fact.
Yeah, and I really want to thank ICANN for the opportunity to talk about that because we are a so small island. Even if our ocean is as big as Europe, we are very, very small. So I really feel that when we're fighting in Tahiti, there's nothing what happens after. And I really want to make actions. And it's why I try to go on international scene to speak about that and to tell to friends that we're not forgetting what happened because in my country they really try us to forget what happened.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I mean, you were also on at the ICANN Nuclear Ban Forum yesterday, and you spoke at the event, which I thought was very inspiring. Sorry about the noise, by the way. They're still setting up the conference around us, which will start in 20 minutes. So what do you expect of the Humanitarian Impact Conference and of the other conferences this week? What's your hope being here as a nuclear activist from Polynesia?
First, for me, it's a big opportunity to have contact because I really feel that I'm a young activist. It's only 3 years, and I have one opportunity to go to United Nations in New York, but not really met people. So this forum is just amazing, and I really feel since the beginning of the forum that I'm a part of a community. I cry like every stories that I heard from Kazakhstan, from Japan, Hibakusha. And I'm so grateful for that and to see that we have a common story, we have a common history, terrible history, and today we have the same consequences. And for me, this is great because in my country, some people, Polynesian, they say, you're crazy. You're not sick because of nuclear test. And I was like, I think, yes, it is. There's big consequences. So here I am, and I realized, you're right. What happened in Polynesia is the same in Japan, Kazakhstan, in Nevada. So this is very big, and I hope that we will keep in touch and maybe create a community of victim of nuclear test or a victim of atomic bomb like Japan, and just talk to each other, sharing our stories, and decided what can we do to help each other.
Thank you so much. This was very powerful. We're absolutely right. You have to speak to allies in order to encourage each other, empower each other. And that also makes me very proud that at ICANN we're trying to bring together all of the community around nuclear weapons, including impacted communities. So this is absolutely wonderful that you can be here with us. And that concludes, I think, our first. No, we also have a. Thank you so much for being with us. We have a third guest, Georg Wilhelm. Nice to see you again. From the Austrian Foreign Ministry. So you are one of the organizers of today's conference. Tell me more about what you are trying to achieve here.
Well, it's really about grounding the debates. It's about putting the sort of factual reasoning for pursuing nuclear disarmament on a more factual basis. So basically looking at the consequences, looking at the risks, looking at the research that we already put together, also in previous humanitarian conferences, but also new research that has emerged since the last humanitarian conference, and putting that together as, if you like, a common factual basis to sort of push nuclear disarmament forward.
So basically getting the emotions out of the nuclear disarmament debate is not about we take away your weapons or we try to delegitimize your security policies, but rather we try to focus on the evidence. What are the implications of having nuclear weapons, implications of nuclear deterrence, and what happens when something goes wrong?
Absolutely. And it's of course also the idea of empowering people, giving people the tools to also put these facts to work, to argue for a more inclusive security approach, and a security approach that also considers the security of everybody and not just of certain states, certain regions, but really something where we all can sort of come together on a factual basis that gives power to every voice in the room, and also to the affected communities who've not been really given the same kind of access to policymakers, decision makers, as one would hope. So this is also for them. This is why we have also speakers from affected communities at the opening segment, as you'll see.
Yeah, as we also heard from Hinamura, that has a very powerful effect and empowers many people. So do you also have states participating at this conference that have not signed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons yet, whom we can reach with these arguments and try to get the message across that you can't just see nuclear weapons through the lens of a superpower?
Absolutely. We have quite a few countries, many more countries than are coming for the TPNW MSP, who sort of see this still as possibly a step too far to come to the MSP, but who are open to engaging with the humanitarian consequences. And this is also something that was very successful in 2015. You remember we had a statement of 159 countries on the humanitarian concept at the time.
And the biggest ever substantive statement in a multilateral setting, if I remember correctly.
Very correct, very correct. And actually more than that, because there were also additional statements on the humanitarian consequences, who didn't share the entire text, but shared the concern about humanitarian consequences, which actually brought it to over 90% of MPT member states, states parties rather, arguing on humanitarian consequences being an important element. So it's really sort of helped to bring the debate forward and the urgency.
Quite a massive take-up then. And maybe to conclude, can you just spin the arc from the third Humanitarian Impact Conference in Vienna in 2014 and now the fourth one? It's been 8 years in between. A lot has happened. How do you connect the two events?
So it's not meant in a sense as a continuation, but as you say, it's been 8 years. There's been generations, if you like, of diplomats and activists sort of who weren't at the last conferences. So it's in a sense a bridge builder. It's trying to bring people up to speed. What have we already achieved? But it's also bringing the new evidence and additional information that we've gathered. In the meantime, you'll see there's lots of interesting data that's come about from the environment to risk that I think is very important to share. So it's bring people up to speed, but it's also updating. That's sort of the idea. Also, of course, to lay the ground, set the scene for tomorrow's MSP for those who are coming, but also to bring more diplomats from others who aren't coming into the boat and show them the urgency of the arguments.
Thank you so much. Very succinct. So this is really a very positive development. We're talking here in a very constructive way about nuclear weapons, trying to bring together the state community to prohibit them and focus on what they actually do. In times where there's nuclear threats, where there's escalating conflicts. And so I think this is very important to focus on and to get lots more attention for this process. Thank you so much for doing this, for being here with us. And this concludes our live stream. We will be back at 5:30 p.m. today. We'll give you a summary of the conference proceedings. Join us then.